Okay, so now we have finally all three axes assembled. And before going any further, you want to make sure that everything's running smoothly. So what you want to do is twist each of the knobs, make sure that everything works without very light finger force to adjust the knobs. You want to make sure that there's no play in the carriages, up and down or tilting. If there is some play, you may need to go in and adjust those split nuts, squeeze them a little bit tighter. Or you may need to loosen up some screws to make sure that you aren't getting any binding with the nut cocked slightly to one side or the other. So now we can proceed with the final stage of the mechanical assembly, which is the spindle mount. Spindle mount is these two pieces they're identical. They fit together in sort of a clamshell fashion, and they'll be mounted like so on the Z slide. And then there's another little cap that fits on here, and then your router body will slide right into that cavity there. So the first thing to do is take the side that goes to the X minus side, basically the same side that's going to have the motor on it, and take this little end cap plate and assemble this with a couple of these same 1032 screws. Go ahead and tighten this side, these ones down. What we're going to do is take this, and the idea is to basically sort of loosely assemble everything at this point. And we stick this piece, you notice that when you overlap these pieces, you want them to overlap such that when everything is lined up, these screw holes here will line up with these two holes here, as opposed to like that. You want it like that, basically. So go ahead and, with these sets of holes in the top, go ahead and loosely assemble. So now with the screws in this side, you want them tight on this side, but you notice when we finish the assembly there's going to be a little bit of a gap between this end cap and this plate. And that gap gives you a little bit of clearance so that when you tighten these screws down for the final assembly, it'll actually cause this to squeeze down on the router body, and that's what actually holds the router body in place. But at this point, these should be only two screws that are tightened, these two here. The rest of the screws should all be loose. And then we're going to go ahead and also mount this right to our Z carriage, using these holes that should already be pre-threaded. Okay, so now with all four of your mounting hole, screws in place here, but everything's still very loose, what we want to do is take your 12-inch square again, set it on the table, and what we're going to do is we're going to look to make sure that this bracket is stuck in here at a 90-degree angle to the table. So we can hold the square there, and then we can go ahead and just tighten down one side of this. Tighten down one side, and then go ahead and verify that it still looks square, so that's good. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and, everything should be fairly loose here, so we can still slide this open and shut a little bit. The router that I'm using is a Makita router with a metal body. This is actually a fairly nice variable speed router. And it fits just so in here. The bottom of the router should just clear the bottom plate of this bracket. Now what you want to do is just go ahead and by hand hold the thing clamped shut, and these four screws 2 up above, and then 2 down below. Go ahead and tighten those up. And then finally what we can do is we can go ahead and position the router. It kind of slipped out. Now we can use these final 2 screws over here to actually clamp the router body in place. And you'll see this metal will actually flex in a little bit as you tighten it. You don't want to over tighten it. You don't need to screw it so it's all the way flat up against the other piece. You just want it so that you've got a good snug fit and the router's not going to slide out. It's also kind of convenient if you mount the router so that the cord for the router is not angled directly back but out this way, so that gives you better clearance for when you're using this hand wheel. So that pretty much completes the mechanical assembly. Now move on to the electrical phase.